In my experience, there have been 4 key pillars that young people embraced to cultivate that sense of agency. The first pillar is family. And here's the key, this first pillar. Regardless of the family that a young person was from, the family that they were on the way to form was radically different. They typically were following the success sequence, which, as some of you know, at least from last night's trivia that participated, that if you finish just a high school degree, get a full-time job of any kind, just so you learn the dignity and discipline of work, and then if you have children, if you get married first, 97% of millennials who follow that series of decisions in that order avoid poverty. This is why it's so important to teach concepts like the success sequence in schools so that young people have a better sense of the likely rewards and consequences associated with different series of life decisions. During our educational panel, we'll talk about some of the challenges, certainly that I've faced in trying to teach these concepts in school. So that was my first observation with kids who break the cycle of disadvantage. They recognize that one of the most consequential decisions a human being can make is to bring another human being into the world, and that there are better pathways to do so. So that's the first pillar that, in my observations. The second observation I've seen for young people who have broken the cycle of disadvantage is that they had a moral framework for making decisions, usually driven by a personal faith commitment. Didn't matter if it was Christianity or Buddhism or any kind of organized religion, but there were a set of tenets that they lived by. And then they were also part of a larger community of people who also lived by this moral code to hold themselves accountable, and that could be reinforced when a young person faced inevitable, challenging decisions. So that's my second observation, the power of a personal faith commitment. For those young people who broke their cycle of disadvantage, this was a part of their toolkit. My third observation about young people who have broken the cycle of disadvantage is that they benefited from some kind of educational freedom or school choice. In the district, and we just launched Vertex Partnership Academies, of the nearly 2,000 students who started 9th grade in the year 2015, 4 years later, only 7% graduated from high school ready for college, meaning that they started 9th grade and either dropped out or did earn their high school diploma, but still could not do math nor reading without remediation if they did go to college. And in New York City, as of today, still, we're fighting like heck in Albany because the governor has proposed to lift the legislative cap. But as of right now, today, because of this legislative barrier, you are barred from launching a new school if you wanted to serve these kids, these 93% of kids that are leaving high school completely unready. That is why we have to fight for more school choice. I'm excited that we'll be hearing from Hannah Scandera at the Daniels Fund later today, who's going to talk about the commitment that Daniels is making to add 100,000 choice seats, whether they be charter, private, virtual, homeschool, micro school, whatever. Let's put power in the hands of parents. And that we'll hear more about the initiative that's happening across 4 states, including Utah, with that goal by 2030. And finally, in my observation of young people who've been able to break the cycle of disadvantage, and again, remember, these are young people who are in those same challenging conditions where some kids succumb to the challenges they faced and essentially recreate them, but these kids did something different. These kids, if they were on their way to form a strong family, regardless of the family that they came from, if they'd had a personal faith commitment, if they'd benefited from school choice and educational freedom, then that usually created a foundation for that young person to have what I call an entrepreneurial mindset. That they were a problem solver in their own lives to handle challenges whenever they inevitably come. The idea of an overcomer's mindset. That's the idea. That's what we're trying to build in our young people, that they're not victims, they're not inherently oppressed, they're not inherently oppressors. That there are these pillars, that there are these institutions that if young people can embrace, we can invigorate a new age of agency. These four pillars, family, religion, education, and entrepreneurship, free, are the empowering alternatives that our rising generation needs to hear. Our approach to upward mobility should be to promote empowering messages, not debilitating ones, that free children from the burdens of grievance and dependency, and instead launch them into futures marked by hope and agency.